In Lagos, life had not been kind to Raymond. In the years after he abandoned his family, he drifted aimlessly through the sprawling city. He took whatever work he could find, hauling bricks at construction sites, offloading crates at the docks, and when he couldn't find work, he drowned his sorrows in bottles of cheap ogogoro liquor. He slept in crowded shacks or on benches in motor parks. Every night, guilt gnawed at him, but he tried to convince himself that he had done the right thing by leaving. Perhaps, he told himself, Ada was better off without him. Perhaps someone else would help them, or at least they wouldn't have an extra mouth, his, to feed. But as the months turned into years, Raymond's self-deception crumbled. He was miserable, and he knew it was misery of his own making. He often thought of his family, especially in his rare sober moments or in the depths of night when regret haunts most deeply. He imagined Ada struggling alone, the children growing up without him. The thought was almost unbearable, yet still pride and shame kept him away. He never returned to Nsukka, not even when he heard through a distant relative one year that Ada and the children were somehow getting by without him. The news that they hadn't collapsed in his absence gave him a twisted mix of relief and jealousy. He had wanted them to survive, of course, but a part of him had expected that they might fail without him. Instead, they had managed. It made him feel even more worthless. 10 long years passed. By 10 years out, Raymond was a gaunt, weathered version of his former self, looking far older than his age of 50. One hot afternoon, he sat on the sidelines of a noisy motor park in Lagos, sipping watery porridge from a plastic bowl when a snippet of conversation caught his ear. That little girl from Nsukka in the news built battery from oranges or lemons, I think. They gave her a big scholarship. A man nearby exclaimed, waving the newspaper excitedly. Raymond's ears pricked up. Little girl from Nsukka, scholarship. He set down his bowl and listened intently. Another man snorted. You mean lemons? I saw it. She even go carry first prize, small pikin. They say she and her family will travel abroad safe for some program. Raymond's heart began to thud. A child from Nsukka, winning a prize with a lemon battery. In a flash, he thought of his Chidinma, the baby girl he had never met. Could it be? The first man spread the newspaper on the hood of a parked taxi. Yes, see, I'm here, he said, tapping the photo. From a distance, Raymond caught a glimpse of the image. A young girl holding a trophy, flanked by other children and a woman. A woman that looked like Ada. He couldn't stop himself. Raymond stumbled towards the man. Excuse me, please, can I see that? He asked, voice trembling. The man looked up in surprise. Raymond must have appeared half-crazed. He was thin, unkempt, with red-rimmed eyes. But he didn't care. He pointed at the newspaper. The girl, please, what is her name? The man with the paper frowned, but Raymond's desperate expression compelled him to answer. Chidinma Okafor. They wrote it here. Why? A strangled sound escaped Raymond's throat. His daughter's name in black and white newsprint. With shaking hands, he reached down and dragged the newspaper closer. The men exchanged perplexed glances, but didn't stop him. There it was, a full article with a bold headline. Village Girl's Invention Wins National Scholarship. Family to travel abroad. Below it, a photograph showed Ada and Chidinma. Ada looked slightly older, a little leaner, but it was undoubtedly her. She stood beside a bright-eyed girl who could only be Chidinma, holding a trophy and smiling shyly. Emeka, Obinna were in the picture too, grinning at their sister. They were all taller, healthy-looking, beautifully united. Raymond's vision blurred as tears gathered. He devoured the article's text. It praised young Chidinma Okafor's ingenuity and detailed the awards she had won. One line made Raymond gasp softly. Chidinma, who was raised by a widowed mother, credits her family's support for her success. Widowed. The words stabbed Raymond in the guts. Did Ada consider him dead to them? He supposed he had given her no choice. His eyes raised further. The story mentioned that an education foundation was arranging for the family to accompany Chidinma overseas. They were due to leave for Lagos imminently, the very next week, to finalize travel documents and then fly to London for the program. Raymond steps back from the newspaper, his entire body shaking. The men were staring at him now. Do you know them? One ventured. But Raymond couldn't respond. His voice was lost in the whirlwind of emotions inside him. Pride, astonishment, and overwhelming, crushing guilt. His daughter, the baby he had disowned before she even took her first breath, had grown into a brilliant girl, bound for achievements half a world away. And he had not been there for any of it. Not her first steps, not her first words, not her moments of doubt or triumph. Nothing. A sob rose in his throat. He pushed the newspaper back towards the men. "Thank you," he managed to croak, before turning and stumbling away, dazed. He wandered through the busy motor park in a haze. The noises of Lagos, honking down for buses, hawkers calling out wares, engines revving, all faded under the roaring in his ears. They would be leaving for London. If he didn't act now, he might truly lose the chance to ever see them again. Maybe forever. For 10 years, Raymond had wallowed in regret and self-pity, too ashamed to face what he had done. But something about seeing Ada and the children in that photo, smiling, successful, despite all the hardship, ignited a spark of determination in him. They had survived without him, yes, but that didn't erase his longing to beg their forgiveness, to see them at least once and tell them he knew how terribly he had failed them. Before he even fully knew what he was doing, Raymond found himself running toward the main road. He had nothing to his name but a few naira in his pocket and the cloths on his back, but he had to get to Nsukka. If they were leaving next week for London, they would likely be preparing now. Maybe he could catch them before they departed. He knew he didn't deserve it, but he prayed silently, feverishly as he ran. "Please, God, give me one chance. Let me see them. Let me tell them I am sorry." By sheer fortune, a commercial bus was loading passengers in the Ojuelegba motor park for a direct trip east to Nsukka that very evening. Raymond spent nearly every last naira he had scraped together to buy a seat. As the bus rumbled out of Lagos, he pressed his forehead against the window, heart thudding with a mixture of hope and dread. As the first lights of morning broke the horizon, The bus finally entered Nsukka. Raymond's stomach was in knots. He had rehearsed what he might say 1,000 times, yet he still had no idea how to actually face them. What would he find? Would Ada slam the door in his face? Would his children, his grown children now, turn away from him? He tried to swallow, but his mouth was dry with fear. The bus rolled to a stop at the small Nsukka motor park. Raymond leaped out before it had even finished braking. He broke into a run, heading straight for the familiar dirt road that led to Ada's home. His lungs burned in the morning heat, but he didn't slow down until the modest compound he knew so well came into view. Raymond's heart nearly stopped. The old wooden gate was ajar. He pushed it open and stepped in. The Udala fruit tree still cast dappled shadows over the yard. There were fresh flowers planted by the doorway and new blue paint on the house's exterior walls. The sight drove home all he had missed. Whole years of small improvements, little changes Ada must have made over time. Gathering every ounce of courage, Raymond approached the front door. His hands shook uncontrollably. Before he could knock, the door swung open. Mama Nkechi stood there, broom in hand, about to sweep her friend Ada's front step. She froze, peering at the gaunt, trembling man before her. Her eyes widened in disbelief, then narrowed in fury as she recognized him. Chioma, Raymond, is it you? She exclaimed, voice sharp. Raymond bowed his head in shame. He could barely choke out the words. Good morning, ma, he said hoarsely. Mama Nkechi's lips pursed. This was the first time she had seen Raymond since the day he left Ada in the clinic. In that moment, all of her memories of Ada's suffering flashed through her mind. The nights of the fever, the hungry days, the struggle she had witnessed. She gripped a broom tightly. You have mind to show your face here, eh? She hissed. After 10 years, you come back now? What do you want, Raymond? I came to see Ada and the children, he said, voice barely above a whisper. Please, are they home? Mama Nkechi let out a bitter laugh. Home? You think they waited here for you? You that left them to die? She stepped forward, anger radiating from her tiny frame. I should break this broom on your head for what you did to Ada, you useless man, she snapped. Raymond flinched but didn't run. He sank to his knees on the doorstep, hands clasped. Ma, I know I have no right, he said, tears forming in his eyes. What I did was unforgivable. I just beg you, are they safe? Where are they? With a heavy hiss, she answered, Ada and the children are not here, she said, her tone still cold. They traveled. Raymond's blood ran cold. Traveled? To where? To Lagos, Mama Nkechi replied curtly. They left yesterday. They are flying out of the country today, London. Raymond felt as if the ground had opened beneath him. He had missed them by one day. One single day. "No," he murmured, her hand coming up to clutch his chest. "Please, did they say when? Which flight? Maybe Which flight do I know?" Mama Nkechi said, throwing up her free hand. Her expression softened just a touch at the sight of Raymond's desperation. In a gentler voice, she added, "They'll be at Murtala Mohammed Airport in Lagos this afternoon to board the plane." Raymond stared at her, then slowly nodded, absorbing the information. Lagos this afternoon. He could still make it if he hurried, if luck was on his side. Without another word, he scrambled to his feet. "Thank you, Ma," he managed to say, eyes wet. Before the bewildered neighbor could respond, Raymond turned and sprinted back out the gate, as if the hounds of hell were at his heels. Back at the motor park, a small intercity bus was preparing to depart for Lagos. It was the same bus, in fact, that Raymond had arrived on, now headed back with new passengers. Without hesitation, he waved down the driver and used his very last naira to pay for an empty seat available. As the bus barreled toward Lagos, and Raymond silently urged it further with every passing mile. Traffic heading into the city was merciless. As they neared the outskirts of Lagos, by early afternoon, congestion turned the highway into a parking lot. The driver cursed under his breath as they inched forward behind a line of honking cars and lorries. Each minute that streaked by made Raymond press his fist harder against his knee. Finally, when the bus reached a stop near the airport, Raymond couldn't wait any longer. They were close enough. He thanked the driver hastily and jumped out into the throng of vehicles. He ran. Despite the exhaustion weighing on him, Raymond ran harder than he ever had in his life. He sprinted along the roadside, dodging around idling cars and bewildered pedestrians. The airport's concrete terminal building loomed ahead. His heart was in his throat as he dashed through the glass doors of the departure hall. Travelers bustled all around. For a panicked moment, he didn't know where to go. Then he spotted a sign, "International flights, departures." He bolted in that direction, down a corridor, and emerged into a vast hall full of check-in counters and waiting passengers. Frantically, Raymond scanned the crowd. There were hundreds of people. He spun around, eyes darting from face to face. Where were they? What if they were already gone? His chest tightened. Suddenly, across the hall, near the security checkpoint, he saw a familiar figure. Ada. Even from afar, he recognized her poise. Ada stood with the children clustered around her, talking to an airline official. Emeka was holding a suitcase. Amaka had a backpack. Obinna was fidgeting excitedly, and beside Ada stood a small girl with bright, curious eyes, hugging a yellow teddy bear. Chidinma. Raymond's breath caught. It was them, his family. They looked just moments away from heading through security. Without thinking, Raymond cupped his hands around his mouth and yelled, "Ada!" His voice cracked from emotion and strain, but it rang out above the airport's din. "Ada! Emeka! Please wait!" Ada about to hand over their boarding passes, froze. She knew that voice at once, even after all this time. Slowly, almost unwillingly, she turned toward the sound. Emeka, Amaka, and Obinna turned too, eyes widening in disbelief. They saw him, a gaunt man, weaving through the crowd toward them, clothes smeared with dirt, eyes red and filled with tears. Yet, for all the changes, they knew him. Ada's hand flew to her chest. Emeka's jaw tightened. Amaka gasped softly. Obinna's mouth fell open. Chidinma looked up at her mother and siblings in confusion, not yet understanding who the stranger was that had stopped them in their tracks. Raymond came to a halt a few paces from them. Breathing hard, he took in the sight of each of them properly now. They were so grown. Even little Obinna was no longer the toddler he had once swung on his knee. And Chidinma, he had to tilt his gaze down to meet the eyes of the delicate 10-year-old half hiding behind Amaka. His heart ached with a decade's worth of longing and regret. Ada found a voice first, though it trembled. Raymond! It was barely a whisper. At the sound of his name on her lips, Raymond's composure shattered. He fell to his knees on the polished airport floor. Right there, in front of stunned onlookers, he clasped his hands together and began to plead, tears streaming down his face. Ada, Emeka, Amaka, Obinna, Chidinma. He sobbed, looking at each of them in turn. I have no right to be here. I know that, but please, hear me. Ada's face was ashen, her eyes shining with tears she was holding back. Emeka stepped forward protectively, his arm in front of his mother and siblings. His expression was a mix of anger and pain. Chidinma peeked around Amaka, her small hand clutching her sister's sleeve. Raymond's voice quavered as he continued, desperation spilling out. I'm sorry, he cried. Leaving you was the worst mistake of my life. I was a coward and a fool. I thought I was cursed by my failures. I blamed you, Ada, and our baby for everything. I called our child a curse. He nearly choked on the word, bowing his head lower. I was wrong. I was so terribly wrong. The raw anguish in his voice washed over the family. Ada raised her hand to cover her mouth, tears escaping despite herself. Raymond lifted his gaze to Emeka, latching onto the eldest son. Emeka, he whispered, my son, I am very sorry. I have regretted my actions every day of my life. Something inside Emeka snapped. Hearing his father's pleading use of my son unleashed 10 years of repressed hurt and fury. He stepped forward, voice erupting in a low, fierce tremble. Don't call me that, he hissed. You lost the right to call me your son the day you left us. Emeka, Ada warned gently, but Emeka couldn't hold back now. The dam had burst. Tears of rage filled the young man's eyes. Do you have any idea what you did to us, Papa? Any idea at all? He said, his voice rising. You left us with nothing. We nearly starved. Do you know I had to become the man of the house when I was 10 years old? 10! I quit school to work so we could eat. Mama almost died one night because she was working herself sick for us, and you weren't there. His voice cracked, the memories like a fire in his veins. Raymond rocked back on his knees, each of Emeka's words striking him like blows. Tears streamed down his face. I cried every night and hated you for what you did. I hated you. I know, he stammered. You had every right to hate me. I hated myself. Beside Emeka, Obinna suddenly burst out through his tears. Why did you do it, Papa? Why did you leave us? Didn't you love us at all? That plaintive question from 15-year-old Obinna, who in that moment looks much like the heartbroken 5-year-old he had been, drove a knife through Raymond's heart. He reached a hand toward Obinna. I did love you. I do love you. All of you, he said brokenly. I was just too blind and foolish to show it. I thought I was doing you a favor by leaving. I thought maybe you would find help without me. I told myself that lie for so long. I was wrong. Amaka was weeping quietly, one arm around Chidinma's shoulders. Her voice came out soft and aching. Papa, do you know what it was like for us? Growing up and watching our friends with their fathers. When we had none, we had to pretend you were away on work. We lied and lied because we were so ashamed that our own father didn't want us. She bit her lip hard. Every birthday, every Christmas, every time one of us achieved something, we wondered, why isn't he here? What did we do wrong? Raymond could only shake his head miserably, palms pressed together. You did nothing wrong. Nothing. It was all my failing. All of it. Ada stepped forward then, gently moving Emeka aside. Her eyes were overflowing with tears, but her voice, when she spoke, was steady and clear. Why, Raymond? She asked. I need to hear it from you in plain words. Why did you leave us? Raymond looked up at the woman he had loved and betrayed. Ada's face, lined with a few more hardships now, still glowed with the inner strength he remembered. He drew a trembling breath. "I was afraid, Ada," he confessed. "I looked at you and the children and felt like I was drowning in my own failure. We could barely feed the 3 we had. When you got pregnant again, I snapped. I convinced myself that fate was cursing me, that I couldn't provide for you, that I would just make it worse by staying. It was cowardice and pride. I told myself maybe some charity or someone would help you if I wasn't there." He closed his eyes in shame. "I was weak and selfish. Instead of fighting harder, I ran." Ada's shoulders sagged. She had imagined his reasons 1,000 times on lonely nights, but hearing him say it still hurt deeply. She wiped a tear from her cheek and nodded slowly. "You broke my heart," she said, voice trembling. "And not just mine, each of these children's hearts. You shattered our family, Raymond." Raymond bowed until his forehead nearly touched the floor. "I know," he whispered. "I have lived with that guilt for 10 years. I don't expect you to forgive me. I had to see you all, even if for a moment, to say how sorry I am, to tell you that none of it was your fault. It was my own failing, my own weakness." For a moment, there was silence. Only the distant echo of a gate announcement and the murmur of travelers around them filled the air. Ada's children looked at her, waiting for a response. Before Ada could speak, a small voice piped up. "Papa!" Everyone turned. It was Chidinma. She had stepped forward from Amaka's side. It was the first time she had spoken, and hearing her call him Papa sent a jolt through Raymond. He lifted his hand to look at his youngest child, the one he had never held, never spoken to until now. "I only had a picture of you, the one Mama kept." She swallowed. "When I was little, I used to wonder if you left because of me, because maybe I did something bad, or maybe I wasn't a good baby." Raymond's face crumpled. "No, my precious girl," he whispered, shaking his head. Never think that." Chidinma continued. She recounted what it felt like growing without a father. Raymond was openly crying now, silent tears dripping onto the floor. "You were never a curse," he croaked. "Not for 1 second. You are a blessing, a miracle that I was too blind to see. I see it now. I'm so proud of you, Chidinma. So proud of all of you." Chidinma managed a small, trembling smile at those words. She had longed to hear her father say he was proud, even if she hadn't realized it until this moment. She wiped her face with the back of her hand, steadying herself. Then, slowly, she extended her right hand toward her father. Raymond stared at the little hand being offered to him. For a split second, he was afraid to reach for it. Afraid this was a dream or that she would pull away. But he saw the earnestness in Chidinma's eyes and gently, reverently, encased her hand in both of his own. "I forgive you, Papa," Chidinma said, her voice clear, though tears were sliding down her round cheeks. A collective exhale of emotion came from the family. Raymond let out a shuddering breath he hadn't realized he was holding. A light of relief, of gratitude bloomed in his eyes at her words. "Thank you," he whispered, squeezing her hand over so softly. Ada's eyes were full of tears, but also a calm strength. She gently placed a hand on Raymond's shoulder, prompting him to rise from his knees. He did so unsteadily, standing before Ada like a penitent schoolboy. "I forgave you in my heart some time ago, Raymond," Ada said quietly. "For my own peace, I let go of the hatred. But forgiving doesn't mean forgetting. It doesn't mean all the damage is undone." She glanced at her children, all of them still watching their father with a mixture of emotions. "We are not the same people you left behind. And you can't just step back into our lives as if nothing happened." Raymond lowered his head. "I know," he whispered. "I know that I don't think I can just come back. You have a new life now, and I don't want to disrupt it. I'm so happy you all have done well." He took a shaky breath. "I would like to stay in contact, if that's even possible. Even if it's just through letters or phone calls once in a long while, so I can know how you're doing, so I can maybe one day show you all that I have truly changed." Ada studied the man she had once loved. The anger in her had ebbed, leaving mostly pity and a lingering ache. She exchanged a glance with Emeka. Emeka gave a terse little nod. Ada reached into her handbag and retrieved a pen and an old receipt. Quickly, she scribbled down a phone number, the number of a cousin in Nigeria who would always know their whereabouts, and an email address she had recently created for the family. She folded the bit of paper and pressed it into Raymond's hand. "This is how you can reach us," she said. "We will be in London for some time. You can call my cousin or send a message to this email occasionally for updates." Raymond accepted the paper as if she had handed him the key to the world. He clutched it to his chest. "Thank you," he breathed. A final boarding call boomed over the loudspeakers. The flight to London was about to close. Ada and the children looked at the gate, then back at Raymond. The moment was so bittersweet, full of reconciliation, yet painfully short. Ada's eyes lingered on Raymond's face, the face of the young man she had fallen in love with. She offered him a trembling, sincere smile. "We have to go now," she said softly. Raymond's voice quavered. "I understand, of course." He stepped back to give them space. His gaze swept over his children one more time, drinking in every detail. He wanted to memorize them in case this truly was goodbye. Finally, Ada faced Raymond directly. So many words hung unspoken between them. Memories of young love, betrayal, pain, and perhaps the faintest hope of redemption. Ada simply said, "Goodbye, Raymond. May God be with you." "Goodbye, Ada." "Children." Raymond replied, voice barely audible, "God bless all of you." As Ada and the children passed through security, their figures slowly disappeared into the departure hall. The gate attendants scanned their boarding passes one by one. Inside the plane, Ada settled beside the window, her children seated around her. For the first time in their lives, they were about to take flight, leaving behind the place that had broken them and rising toward a future that once seemed impossible. As the plane taxied onto the runway, Ada exhaled deeply, cradling the moment with quiet gratitude. They had made it, against all odds. Down below, Raymond stood on the edge of the viewing gallery, eyes lifted to the sky as the plane ascended. It watched it until it disappeared into the clouds, carrying with it the family he had once abandoned, and the second chance he knew he might never fully earn back. He stood there, silent, filled with regrets, not for what he saw, but for everything he missed. The story ends here. Thank you for watching this story. Did you enjoy it? Let us know in the comments. What did you learn? Please give this video a thumbs up, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe to the Moral Compass. And don't forget to hit the notification bell so you won't miss more powerful stories like this. See you in the next video.